All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stacy Stanislaw, and I'm the Communications Manager for the Drexel Libraries. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon for the webinar, Get to Know the New PubMed. This session is part of the library's fall webinar series called Building Connections to Scholarship. This event series includes over 15 different sessions that focus on tools and systems that the libraries provides to help Drexel Dragons with their different research. You'll find all the details about this series on our website, and I'll add a link to the chat box in just a second. But before I turn it over to Janice, I just wanted to run through a few standard logistics that we're probably hearing in all of our Zoom sessions. First, if you could just keep yourselves muted throughout the presentation, that'd be great. However, if you have any questions, just please unmute and ask your questions, and Janice will answer them as she can. Next, I also wanted to note that we are recording this session, and I'll post the recording on the library's YouTube channel, later today. I'm also going to send an email to all of our attendees with a link to the video and then a link to a very short survey. And we'd just love to hear your feedback after the session. So I think that's it for me. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Janice.
So hello everyone, and thanks for coming out. Again, I'm Janice Masood-Paul, Librarian for Health Science Research, and we're going to talk about what's new in the new version of PubMed. So we'll talk about different changes to features like responsive design, navigation, and I also want to point out a few layout changes of existing features that you've used, but now they live in a different place. I'm going to start with some screen prints, but then pretty quickly I'm going to move to a live demonstration. A lot of you are probably pretty familiar with PubMed, but for those of you who aren't, this is a biomedical database that has about 30 million articles. It primarily consists of Medline, but it also has other resources. Now, about a year or so ago, the NIH started to change the look and feel of PubMed, and they provided a link so we could see its progress. The new version became the default in about mid-May, so the libraries updated our library guides and our classroom instruction to reflect the new version. The old site is available via a legacy link, probably till, I think they said maybe about October 31st or sometime during the end of the month, but frankly, after that, it's anybody's guess. So one of the most visible and welcome improvements to PubMed is the responsive design of the new site. Practically, this means that the site can be used on any device. It could be a mobile device, a desktop, or a tablet, but it'll have the same features and functionality. Previously, only a very basic version of PubMed was available on mobile as an app. And that version really didn't allow you to enter information and still see your entire screen, whereas the new version optimizes the layout for smaller screens. Since more and more of you are doing your work from devices, this may be a significant improvement for you. So it wasn't really easy for me to show you the differences between what the old PubMed looked like on a device and your desktop. But going forward, I'm going to be able to demonstrate these changes live. So I'm going to click on this link, and hopefully my PC will cooperate, and I'll take you to PubMed. We're going to log in. Okay, so this is what the new version of PubMed looks like. And I'm going to demonstrate some of these changes during a search. I'm going to look for information on the effect of mold exposure on asthma. But before I get started with the search, a couple things I wanted to point out. If you're a professor or teaching evidence-based research classes, or a student taking evidence-based research classes, you probably use a tool called PubMed Clinical Queries. And you may wonder, where is it? Where's the tool? It's still there. If you go to the Find column, you'll see Clinical Queries listed right here. And it really hasn't changed. It's the same PubMed clinical queries that you used prior to the update. They haven't changed the interface of this yet. My understanding is that they're going to be doing it possibly sometime this year within the next 6 months, but they don't have a scheduled date yet. The other item that shifted a bit but is still there is the mesh database. If you prefer to search mesh, which is PubMed's thesaurus of preferred vocabulary for searching, mesh is still here. It's still exactly the same layout, but again, just in a slightly different location. And notice that they have a link to what they call Legacy PubMed. So that's the old PubMed website, and it tells you it's going to be here until at least October 31st. It's funny, the wording has changed. It used to say until, but I guess they're keeping it a little more vague now. So you can actually go to this site and you can do your search on the legacy site. But I sort of recommend that you start working with the new PubMed because I know that they are updating the new PubMed. I'm not sure if they're still doing all the updates on this legacy version. So let me show you how to do that. It's really pretty simple and there are not a ton of changes, but it's worth pointing out the changes that they do have. So I'm going to do that search on the effect of mold and asthma. And this is a really simple search. I know I could get a lot more complicated than this, but we'll just search for the terms mold and asthma, and we're going to capitalize our command here. And now I'll click on search. So the first thing you may notice, it's kind of subtle, is this sort. By default, it is sorting by best, what they call best match. This is PubMed's version of a relevancy search. And what this does is it looks at the terms that you're using and they use an algorithm in the background to try and find those terms in, let's say, the title and possibly the abstract field. And those are the ones that rise to the top of your result list. I believe the default sort used to be by date. And if you're interested in that, you just have to change your display options. So when I click on display options, you can see that I can sort by publication date, author journal, or something called most recent, and that's not to be confused with publication date. Most recent really refers to the date that they added the article to PubMed, and that could be quite different than the publication date. So just keep that in mind. The other subtle change is the highlighting of keywords, and that actually is very helpful. So if the keywords that you put in appear in the title or in this little snippet of an abstract, they're bolded. In the past, you could do that, but you used to have to log on to MyNCBI and create your own account, and then you could tweak the settings for display. It doesn't have to get that complicated now. It will automatically do that for you. The default version now is the summary view. But again, these little snippets are something new. Before they didn't show you any of the abstract. Now they'll show you a little bit of the abstract so you have a sense of what you're getting when you do your search without even having to change your view. But you do have the option of changing to an abstract view. Again, I'm going to go back to display. Right now we're in summary mode, but I could switch to abstract, which of course is going to give me or show me the most information. It's also going to show you holding information for Drexel Library. So it's a good idea to switch to your abstract view if you're interested in looking at the full text of an item. Of course, that's nothing new. That was the case even in the prior version of PubMed. Let me point out a couple of other differences, and this may have jumped out at you. This is a graphic representation of the publication dates for this topic. And that can be really helpful because let me enlarge this a little bit. This gives you a sense of when items were published on your topic. If you were interested in looking at maybe points within the past 20 years or so when this topic had more publications, you could just drag this little button. I notice there's a jump in publications here around 2011. So you can just drag this little button to this part of the graph and let it go. And your result set is just going to include items that were published since 2011. One thing I want to point in mind though, while it's reorganizing our results here, that tool, and it'll pop up in a second, here it is. This tool is only effective on our current search. So let's say I wanted to come back up to my search box and edit this search in some way. I don't know, maybe I wanted to look at mold and dust, or mold or dust and asthma. If I added terms to this and then clicked on search, it would no longer limit my results between 2011 and 2020. What the graphic would then show me are the results based on that current search. So anytime you redo the search, you're also going to have to manipulate the graphic. Probably the best way to limit your publication dates, rather than use this where the tool doesn't really stick from one search to the other, is to just scroll down to where it has your publication date. You have options for 1 year, 5 years, or you can put in a custom range. But this tool will stick from one search to the next. Let me select the last 10 years here. I'm sure that will activate in a second. It's a little bit slow right now. There we go. Another new filter, and this is something brand new here, is this associated data filter. So there are a lot of articles within PubMed that have associated data sets. Now, I'm not talking about a table or, I don't know, some type of information within the document that contains data, like a figure. I'm actually talking about supplemental information where there's a separate data set that goes along with the article. If you click on associated data sets, you're able to look at the results that have data sets attached. So if you want to see the data set, you actually need to be in abstract view, which is fine. We're in abstract view now. Just scroll down to where it says supplementary information and notice that associated data is listed here. Let's expand this. And it gives me data sets from GenBank. I'm just going to look at one of these so you can see how this works. You have an option of looking at that data set by searching in PubMed or searching in nucleotide, which is part of the repository. It's kind of strange when you do it in PubMed because it's circuitous. It'll take you back to the point where you're conducting your search. I find it's much more helpful to look in the repository. I'm going to click on nucleotide, and it'll show me my actual data set. Depending on the repository, you have options of looking at this data in several different ways. If I want to look at a graphic of the data, I'll just click on graphics. And then some of the repositories allow you to run different software like Blast. Let's look at another one. So I'm going to go back to my list. Just scroll through some of the citations in my results. Let's see, this one. This one has, yes, a clinical trial. So let's take a look at that. I'm I'm going to expand my associated data. And here's the clinical trial link, which I can look at in PubMed, but I want to see it in clinicaltrials.gov to actually see the data set, not just search it. This will give me information on the clinical trial, on allergens in inner city schools, the date that it was completed, when they posted information, and the last date that they updated it. And as I scroll through, you'll see that there's information on the study design. Looks like it's a prospective cohort study, eligibility criteria, and so on. And I can look at the results as well. Let's scroll back up, take a look at this study result tab. And you see they give me basic information about the cohort and some outcome measures. So again, what you find within this data set is really going to depend on the study. There's a lot of variation in what you can find in clinical trials. So if it's extensive, you'll find a lot, but again, it varies. But this gives you a direct link to any data sets that are associated with PubMed. Let's go back to the results set. So I'm going to unclick this so we have a slightly larger result set. And this is probably a good time for me to sort of walk you through some of the features that are associated with the individual citations. I'm going to look at this second one here. So notice that they've got these navigation tools, which are kind of cool. And on the extreme left and right of each citation, you get a little preview by hovering your mouse over this caret to tell you the title of the next item and a little preview of what it's about typically. Little snippet. The cite feature is probably something that students would really like. And you know, it's funny because some of these features in this new PubMed were features that are fairly common in other databases, but PubMed lagged behind a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to click on Cite, and you can see that you have the ability to cite a citation using an NLM format, AMA, APA, MLA, or NLM. A lot of acronyms. So I'm going to show you APA. And you can just copy this. And if you're working on a discussion board, you can paste it in a discussion board, or perhaps you can paste it in an article that you're citing. I did a quick check, searched for a couple of different articles that I knew had a lot of authors. And I'm pretty sure that they are using APA 7 because I was searching for articles with more than 10 or 15 authors, and all the authors were listed. And that's one of the key changes in APA version 7. However, I'm still going to ask you to make sure that you check the citation to make sure it's really following APA format, because sometimes you'll see things that are a little bit off. This one looks pretty good. Don't see any problems with it. So I could copy and paste this into a discussion board, as I said earlier. I could also copy this and download it into EndNote. So let me click on download so I can show you what I mean. You can see that this will open with the version of EndNote that I have on my desktop, and that would allow me to pull that citation right into my EndNote library. Let me close that out. If you have Twitter and you're using that to stay in touch with other colleagues or your students, I could also grab this citation and I can tweet about it. Just click on the icon and it will pull up the citation with a link that doesn't have Drexel proxy information. So I would be able to share this with someone and not have to worry about if they had Drexel credentials. Of course, what I'm sharing is just the title and the link will take them back to the abstract. I'm not sharing the full text of the item with them. That could have some fair use problems. So we won't do that, but it'll take them back to the abstract at least. Something else new in PubMed is cited by, and again, common in other databases, but PubMed always had similar articles, but it didn't use the cited by feature. So clicking on that, of course, will show me an article that cited the one that I'm looking at. So this is a good way of finding other articles that may be similar to one that you like, but also have the advantage of being more current. Let's see if there's anything else I want to show you here. By the way, are there any questions about anything that I've shown you so far? Because I've gone through quite a bit in a short time. Okay, so let's move on. I think that's everything I wanted to show you about citations. I'm going to go back to my search results. And I wanted to say a little bit about a feature that's not there anymore. There used to be something called search details on the results page, but you can't see it now because they've moved it to the advanced page. Now, search details lets you sort of lift the curtain on a PubMed search, but it requires a little bit of explanation. So bear with me for a second while I try to explain what this does. PubMed used to have, or actually it still does, it has a feature called automatic term mapping, and it's a function that's been with PubMed for a while. Typically people either love it or they hate it, but what it does is attempt to match any keywords that you enter in a search with the terms in its thesaurus, with its preferred vocabulary. And the goal is to try to improve your search. So this automatic term mapping was augmented, or some people would say it was improved in the new version of PubMed. What it does now is not just map to these terms in the thesaurus, but it also will include things like additional spelling. So if there's a British spelling, it'll include that in your search. It'll include singular and plural forms and a lot more synonyms than it used to in the past. But everybody didn't really like that feature because it gave them less control over the search, especially if you were kind of a power user, if you were a faculty researcher or a librarian and you wanted to control exactly what your search was doing. So this tool called Search Details, which used to be on this page, would tell you what was happening in the background. But they moved it to the advanced page of PubMed. So I'm going to click on this link. And I want to show you what's happening in the background with this search by using search details. Here's the search that we just did on mold and asthma. If I click on details, you'll see all the things that are going on in the background. First, they give you an overview, and then they break it down for every term that you searched. So the major one here is mold. First of all, PubMed prefers the word fungi. So that is actually what it's searching. It's searching fungi. It's still searching mold. It's searching mold with a British spelling as well, and all these other variations on the word mold. So all that is going on in the background of your search. And for asthma, it's not doing quite as much, but it's still searching different variations on that term. Now this is probably fine because it gives you lots of results. But if you wanted a little bit more control over it, you could turn off the automatic term mapping. And one way to do that is to just search for your term, but put quotes around it. So I will search for mold and put quotes around that. And click on search. Probably going to have to go back to that advanced page so you can see it. So notice now if I look at search details, rather than seeing all this, I should see less. Yep, so all I see now is mold. It didn't search for all these other things in the background. And it's the significant difference, though, in the number of results. Again, searching for mold without those quotes. So instead of getting 6,300, I get 167,000. So obviously it's doing a lot more, but doing it this way lets me control it. So the only thing I am searching for is mold. And sometimes, depending on the type of searching that you're doing, that could be really important to you. So I'm going to go back to the main screen. Let's see. That should do it. And before I start to wrap things up, did you have any questions about what I've shown you so far? All right, let me go back to my PowerPoint slides and just kind of wrap it up here. So as a reminder, we talked about the differences between new and legacy PubMed. We looked at features like responsive design, some new features like associated data and the ability to cite individual citations using popular style formats. And then finally, some of the updates to the PubMed ATM algorithms. Still an opportunity for questions, but if you don't have questions or some come to you later, you can always reach out to me at jhm52@drexel.edu. You can check the Drexel Library website for more information on basic or advanced PubMed searching, or just contact one of our Drexel librarians. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So any questions? So if you think of any, you know how to reach me.